They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I prefer mine served with a side of legal documentation and a hefty dose of poetic justice. My name is Sarah Martinez, and 3 years ago, I was nothing more than a mid-level intellectual property attorney at a struggling tech company. Today, I own a $7 million trademark that I purchased for exactly $100, and the man who destroyed my career is begging me not to destroy his. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, because every good revenge story needs context. And trust me, you're going to want to hear every delicious detail of how I went from corporate casualty to trademark queen. It was a Tuesday morning in September when my world first started to crumble. I remember because I was wearing my lucky navy blazer, the one I'd bought to celebrate my promotion to senior IP counsel at Meridian Technologies. The irony wasn't lost on me later that this would be the same blazer I'd wear to my termination meeting exactly 6 months down the line. Meridian Technologies was one of those mid-sized companies that everyone in Silicon Valley pretended was the next big thing. Founded by Marcus Blackwood, a charismatic 40-something with the kind of confidence that could sell ice to penguins. The company specialized in developing proprietary software solutions for enterprise clients. On paper, we were innovative, cutting-edge, revolutionary. In reality, we were burning through investor money faster than a Ferrari burns premium gas. And our most valuable asset wasn't our software at all. It was our trademark portfolio. I'd been with Meridian for 3 years when Marcus hired his new chief technology officer, a snake in an expensive suit named Richard Thornton. Richard came with impressive credentials from Google and Amazon, plus the kind of silver tongue that could convince a board of directors that black was white and up was down. What he also came with, though none of us knew it at the time, was a plan to systematically dismantle everything I'd spent years building. You see, during my tenure at Meridian, I'd done something remarkable. While everyone else was focused on the flashy tech development and the endless pursuit of the next funding round, I'd quietly assembled one of the most comprehensive trademark portfolios in our industry sector. I'm talking about hundreds of registered trademarks covering everything from our core software products to potential future innovations. These weren't just random filings either. I'd strategically mapped out trademark families that would protect us for decades to come, creating multiple layers of intellectual property protection that would be worth millions as the industry evolved. The crown jewel of this portfolio was a trademark called Neuralink Pro. Now, before you start thinking about Elon Musk's brain chip company, this was something entirely different. Neuralink Pro was our trademark for a revolutionary artificial intelligence platform that could seamlessly integrate with existing enterprise software systems. The technology was still in development, but the trademark was rock solid, and industry analysts had already started buzzing about its potential market value. I'd filed the Neuralink Pro trademark application myself, working late nights and weekends to ensure every aspect of the filing was perfect. The mark covered software, hardware, consulting services, and even educational materials related to AI integration. It was broad, it was bulletproof, and according to our most conservative estimates, it would be worth at least $7 million once our platform launched. Marcus knew this. Of course, he'd signed off on the trademark strategy personally, often bragging to investors about our impenetrable IP fortress that I'd constructed. But Marcus had a problem that I didn't fully understand until it was too late. He was desperate. Meridian was hemorrhaging money, and the board was getting restless. He needed something big, something that would either save the company or provide him with an exit strategy that wouldn't leave him completely broke. Enter Richard Thornton and his brilliant plan to steal my life's work. It started small. As these things always do, Richard began scheduling meetings about IP strategy optimization without inviting me. When I asked Marcus about it, he brushed me off, saying Richard was just getting up to speed on our intellectual property assets. Then Richard started requesting detailed reports about every trademark in our portfolio, claiming he needed to understand our IP position for his technology development roadmap. I should have seen the red flags, but I was too trusting, too naive. I believed that we were all on the same team, working toward the same goals. I actually helped Richard understand the intricacies of our trademark portfolio, walking him through every filing, every strategic decision, every future opportunity I'd identified. I was literally handing him the roadmap to destroy me. The first real warning sign came during a company all-hands meeting in February. Marcus was presenting our quarterly results to the entire team. And when he got to the section about our intellectual property assets, he said something that made my blood run cold. Thanks to the brilliant strategic work of our CTO Richard Thornton, Marcus announced, "We've identified significant opportunities to monetize our trademark portfolio in ways that will provide immediate value to our investors." I felt my stomach drop. This was my work, my strategy, my trademark portfolio. I'd spent 3 years building it from nothing, and now Marcus was crediting Richard for identifying opportunities that I'd literally spelled out in detailed memos months earlier. After the meeting, I cornered Marcus in his office. "Marcus, I think there might have been some confusion in your presentation. The trademark monetization strategy we discussed came from my department, not Richard's." Marcus looked at me with the kind of condescending smile that powerful men reserve for women who dare to challenge them. "Sarah, I appreciate your contributions to our IP work, but Richard brings a level of strategic thinking that, frankly, we haven't had before. He's helping us see the big picture in ways that pure legal thinking can't achieve." Pure legal thinking. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Marcus, I've been developing comprehensive IP strategy for this company since day one. Every trademark in our portfolio exists because I identified the opportunity and executed the filing strategy. Look, Sarah, I'm not trying to diminish your contributions. You're great at the technical legal stuff, but what Richard brings is business acumen. He understands how to turn IP assets into real revenue, not just legal protection." I left that meeting feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. This wasn't just about credit or recognition. This was about something much more fundamental. Marcus and Richard were positioning themselves to take control of the IP portfolio I'd built, and they were systematically erasing my role in its creation. Over the next few weeks, the situation escalated rapidly. Richard started making unilateral decisions about our trademark portfolio without consulting me. He filed provisional patent applications related to Neuralink Pro without involving my department. He scheduled meetings with potential licensing partners without including me in the discussions. When I tried to push back, I was told that I was being territorial and resistant to collaboration. Marcus started scheduling weekly one-on-one meetings with Richard to discuss IP strategy, meetings that I wasn't invited to attend. My access to certain company documents was quietly restricted. My input on major IP decisions was no longer requested. It was death by 1,000 cuts, and I could see exactly where this was heading. The end came on a Thursday morning in March. I arrived at the office to find an email in my inbox requesting my immediate presence in the conference room for an urgent matter. When I walked in, I found Marcus, Richard, and Janet Williams from HR sitting around the table with serious expressions and a manila folder that I somehow knew contained my termination paperwork. "Sarah, please have a seat," Marcus said, his voice taking on the artificially warm tone that people use when they're about to deliver bad news. "We need to discuss some concerns that have come to our attention regarding your performance and your fit with the company's evolving needs." I sat down, my heart pounding, but tried to keep my voice steady. "What concerns?" Richard leaned forward, his expression grave. "Sarah, we've been reviewing the intellectual property portfolio, and we've identified some significant gaps in strategic thinking and execution. There are missed opportunities, inefficient processes, and frankly, some decisions that have put the company at unnecessary risk." I stared at him in disbelief. "Are you serious?" "Richard, I've spent the last month walking you through every aspect of our IP strategy. You've seen the documentation, the analysis, the projected values. What specific gaps are you referring to?" For example, Richard continued, pulling out a thick document. "Your filing strategy for Neuralink Pro was overly broad and potentially vulnerable to challenge. A more experienced IP strategist would have taken a more nuanced approach that provided better protection while minimizing exposure." I felt my face flush with anger. "That's complete nonsense, and you know it. The Neuralink Pro trademark application is solid. I researched every aspect of that filing for months. The breadth of protection is exactly what we need for long-term market dominance. Marcus held up his hand. Sarah, this isn't a debate. The decision has been made. We're restructuring the legal department to better align with our strategic objectives, and unfortunately, that means we'll be terminating your employment effective immediately. The words hit me like a physical blow. You're firing me? We're eliminating your position. Janet chimed in, her voice taking on the rehearsed tone of someone who delivered this speech many times before. This is purely a business decision based on the company's evolving needs. We'll be providing a generous severance package and excellent references for your future endeavors. I looked around the table at these three people who were casually destroying my career. This is about the trademark portfolio, isn't it? You want to push me out so you can take credit for my work? Sarah, that's paranoid thinking. Marcus replied. This decision is based purely on performance and strategic fit. The severance package includes a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement and a non-compete clause. I'd strongly advise you to review the terms carefully with legal counsel before making any hasty statements. And there it was. The threat wrapped in concern. The legal muzzle disguised as generous severance. They were buying my silence and my non-interference while they carved up the IP portfolio I'd built. I spent the next hour in a haze of paperwork and exit procedures. They escorted me to my office to pack my personal belongings while a security guard watched to make sure I didn't take any company documents. Richard even had the audacity to stop by and wish me good luck in my future endeavors while I was loading my law school diplomas into a cardboard box. But here's the thing about being an intellectual property attorney. You learn to read the fine print, and more importantly, you learn to plan for contingencies. 6 months earlier, when I first sensed that Richard might be positioning himself to take over IP strategy, I'd done something that I thought of as simple due diligence. I'd conducted a comprehensive audit of our entire trademark portfolio, documenting every filing, every renewal date, every potential vulnerability. What I found during that audit would later become the foundation of my revenge. You see, in all of Richard's ambitious planning and Marcus's desperate maneuvering, they'd overlooked one crucial detail. Trademark registrations require maintenance. They have renewal deadlines, fee payment requirements, and specific procedural obligations that must be met to keep the registrations active. Miss a deadline, fail to pay a fee, forget to file the right paperwork, and your multi-million-dollar trademark can simply lapse into the public domain. During my audit, I discovered that several of our older trademark registrations were approaching critical renewal deadlines. Most of these were routine maintenance issues that I'd been tracking in my personal calendar system, planning to handle them as part of my regular workflow. But there was one registration that was particularly interesting, a foundational trademark that served as the basis for our entire Neuralink Pro trademark family. The original Neuralink trademark had been filed 5 years earlier, back when Meridian was just getting started and money was tight. It was a bare-bones filing covering basic software services, but it established our priority date for the Neuralink brand. Every subsequent filing in the Neuralink Pro family referenced this original trademark as prior art and foundation. Here's where it gets interesting. The original Neuralink trademark was coming up for its first renewal deadline, which occurs between the 5th and 6th year after registration. The deadline was exactly 4 months after my termination date. The renewal fee was a modest $325, plus attorney fees for filing the paperwork. But here's the crucial detail that Richard and Marcus didn't understand. I was the only person at Meridian who knew about this deadline. You see, when I'd built our trademark tracking system, I'd used my personal calendar and task management system as the primary repository for deadline information. The company had a basic docketing system, but it was incomplete and unreliable. For critical deadlines, I'd always relied on my own meticulous tracking methods. When they terminated me, Marcus and Richard assumed they were inheriting a complete, self-managing IP portfolio. They had no idea that dozens of critical deadlines existed only in my personal files, and that the most important deadline of all was a ticking time bomb that would detonate exactly 4 months after they pushed me out the door. I could have told them. During the termination meeting, I could have mentioned the upcoming renewal deadline, I could have provided them with my complete deadline tracking information as part of the transition process. I could have been the bigger person and protected the company's interests despite how badly they treated me. But I didn't. Instead, I went home, opened a bottle of wine, and spent the evening researching the legal requirements for acquiring lapsed trademarks. The next few months were surreal. I applied for unemployment benefits, updated my resume, and started networking for new job opportunities. I had to sign the non-disclosure agreement and non-compete clause to get my severance pay, which meant I couldn't work for any of Meridian's competitors for 12 months. But that was fine. I had other plans. I also started monitoring Meridian's activities very carefully. Through industry publications, LinkedIn updates, and careful observation of their public filings, I tracked everything Marcus and Richard were doing with the IP portfolio I'd built. And boy, were they busy? Within 6 weeks of my termination, Meridian announced a major licensing deal for the Neuralink Pro platform. The press release, written in Richard's pretentious style, described how Meridian's innovative IP strategy had created opportunities for strategic monetization of our revolutionary AI technology. The deal was reportedly worth $12 million over 3 years, with the potential for additional revenue as the technology scaled. Marcus gave interviews to tech publications about Meridian's robust intellectual property fortress and their sophisticated approach to IP monetization. Richard was quoted extensively about the strategic vision that had unlocked the value of their trademark portfolio. Reading these articles was like watching someone steal your car and then give interviews about their brilliant automotive acquisition strategy. Every word they spoke was built on work I had done, strategies I had developed, protections I had put in place, but I bit my tongue and waited. The original Neuralink trademark renewal deadline was July 15th. By July 1st, I started checking the USPTO database daily to see if Meridian had filed their renewal paperwork. Day after day, the database showed no activity. July 10th, nothing. July 12th, nothing. July 14th, nothing. On July 15th, I checked the database one final time. Still nothing. At 11:59 p.m. that night, the original Neuralink trademark officially lapsed due to non-renewal. At 12:01 a.m. on July 16th, I filed a new trademark application for Neuralink in my own name. Now, before you start thinking this was some kind of illegal scheme, let me be clear about the law here. When a trademark lapses due to non-renewal, it enters the public domain. Anyone can file a new application for the same mark, as long as they meet the standard requirements for trademark protection. There's no rule that says the original owner gets special rights to reclaim a lapsed mark. My new application was absolutely legitimate. I was planning to launch my own IP consulting firm, and I intended to use the Neuralink trademark for legitimate business purposes in the field of intellectual property strategy and AI technology consulting. The filing was proper, the fees were paid, and my use intentions were genuine. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Without the foundational Neuralink trademark, Meridian's entire Neuralink Pro trademark family was suddenly vulnerable. You see, their newer trademarks all claimed priority based on the original filing. With that original filing now lapsed and potentially owned by someone else, their trademark rights became murky at best. Even more problematic, their $12 million licensing deal was specifically based on exclusive rights to the Neuralink Pro trademark family. If their trademark rights were questionable, their licensing partner would have legal grounds to terminate the deal and potentially demand return of any payments already made. I knew it would take several weeks for the implications to become clear to Marcus and Richard. USPTO databases aren't updated in real time, and most companies only check their trademark status quarterly unless they're specifically monitoring for problems. I used that time to prepare. First, I hired the best trademark attorney in the city, someone with absolutely no connection to Meridian Technologies. I paid him to conduct a comprehensive analysis of Meridian's trademark portfolio and the legal implications of the lapsed Neuralink registration. His conclusion was exactly what I'd hoped. Meridian's trademark rights were now seriously compromised, and their licensing agreement was potentially void. Second, I began documenting everything I could about my role in developing Meridian's IP strategy. I gathered emails, memos, filing records, and strategic documents that proved my authorship of the work that Richard was now claiming credit for. I was careful to only use documents that I'd legitimately retained or that were publicly available, staying well within the bounds of my non-disclosure agreement. Third, I started quietly reaching out to contacts in the industry, letting people know that I was available for IP consulting work and that I had some interesting insights about trademark strategy in the AI technology sector. The bomb exploded on August 23rd. I was having coffee at a Starbucks near my apartment when my phone started buzzing with notifications. Marcus was calling, then Richard, then the main Meridian number, then Marcus again. I let them all go to voicemail and opened my laptop to check the latest industry news. There it was, buried in the legal notices section of TechCrunch. Meridian Technologies faces trademark challenge that could void major licensing deal. The article was brief, but devastating. An unnamed industry source had alerted the publication to potential problems with Meridian's Neuralink Pro trademark rights. The licensing partner, a major enterprise software company called Dataflow Systems, had been notified of the potential issues and was reportedly reviewing their legal options. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Sarah Martinez. The voice was professional but urgent. Yes, who's calling? This is Jennifer Walsh from Walsh, Patterson and Associates. We represent Dataflow Systems. I understand you may have some information relevant to a trademark dispute involving Meridian Technologies. I smiled. I might. When would you like to meet? The meeting with Dataflow's attorneys was everything I'd hoped it would be. I walked them through the entire situation, my role in developing Meridian's IP strategy, the circumstances of my termination, the lapsed trademark registration, and my new application for the Neuralink mark. Jennifer Walsh was particularly interested in the timeline. So you're saying that Marcus Blackwood and Richard Thornton terminated your employment, claimed credit for your IP strategy work, and then failed to maintain the trademark registrations that formed the foundation of their licensing deal with our client? That's exactly what I'm saying. And I have documentation to support every aspect of that timeline. What would you want in exchange for providing testimony and documentation in our dispute with Meridian? I'd been thinking about this question for weeks. I want two things. First, I want public acknowledgement of my role in developing the IP strategy that Meridian has been claiming credit for. Second, I want to discuss a potential licensing arrangement for my new Neuralink trademark. Jennifer smiled. I think we can work with that. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal activity. Dataflow's attorneys filed a motion to terminate their licensing agreement with Meridian, citing fraudulent misrepresentation of trademark rights. Meridian's attorneys scrambled to respond, but their position was hopeless. You can't license trademark rights you don't own, and they'd clearly failed to maintain the registrations that formed the basis of their claimed rights. Meanwhile, my new Neuralink trademark application was progressing smoothly through the USPTO examination process. Since the mark had been previously registered and there were no conflicting applications, approval was virtually guaranteed. Marcus tried calling me repeatedly. When I finally answered, his voice was a mixture of desperation and barely controlled rage. Sarah, we need to talk. This whole situation is a misunderstanding that's spiraling out of control. What situation, Marcus? The situation where you fired me and claimed credit for my work? Or the situation where you failed to maintain the trademark registrations that I'd been tracking? Look, I know we made some mistakes in how we handled your departure, but this legal action is going to destroy the company. Dozens of people will lose their jobs. Is that really what you want? What I want, Marcus, is for people to stop stealing credit for my work. What I want is for companies to honor their obligations to their employees. What I want is for executives to take responsibility for their own failures instead of blaming other people. Sarah, please, let's meet and discuss this rationally. I'm sure we can find a solution that works for everyone. Actually, Marcus, I think we can, but it's not going to be the solution you're hoping for. By October, the situation had reached full-scale crisis mode for Meridian. Dataflow had not only terminated their licensing agreement, but was also demanding return of the $4 million they'd already paid under the deal. Industry publications were covering the story as a cautionary tale about the importance of proper IP management. Marcus and Richard were facing potential personal liability for the fraudulent licensing deal. That's when I got the call I'd been waiting for. "Sarah, this is Marcus. I need to see you. Today, please." We met at a neutral location, a conference room at my attorney's office. Marcus looked like he'd aged 5 years in the 6 months since my termination. Richard was with him, and his usual arrogance had been replaced by barely concealed panic. "Sarah," Marcus began, "I'm going to be direct. We need your help. The company is facing bankruptcy if we can't resolve this trademark issue. We're prepared to make you a substantial offer to license the Neuralink trademark back to us." I looked at these two men who had destroyed my career and were now begging for my help. "How substantial?" Richard leaned forward. "We're prepared to offer $500,000 for an exclusive license to the Neuralink trademark, plus a public acknowledgement of your contributions to our IP strategy." I laughed. Not politely, but the kind of genuine, belly-deep laugh that comes when someone says something so ridiculous that you can't help yourself. "Richard, 6 months ago you told me that my IP strategy work was inadequate and that you were bringing a level of strategic thinking that the company had never had before. Now you want to pay me $500,000 for a trademark that you claim I mismanaged?" Marcus jumped in. "Sarah, please. We made mistakes. We're willing to admit that and make it right." "You're willing to admit that because you have no choice. But here's the problem with your offer. It's about $6.5 million too low." Both men stared at me in shock. "You see, gentlemen, I've done my homework. The Neuralink trademark, properly managed and licensed, is worth approximately $7 million in the current market. Dataflow is paying you $12 million for exclusive licensing rights to the entire Neuralink Pro family. My trademark is the foundation that makes that family possible." "Sarah, that's not realistic," Richard protested. "The company doesn't have $7 million. "Then I guess the company has a problem." I stood up to leave, but Marcus grabbed my arm. "Wait, what would it take? What do you actually want?" I sat back down and looked at both of them carefully. "I want several things, and they're all non-negotiable. First, I want a public statement from Meridian acknowledging that the company's intellectual property strategy was developed primarily by me during my tenure there. Second, I want Richard to publicly admit that he misrepresented his role in developing that strategy. Third, I want Marcus to acknowledge that my termination was not performance-based, but was rather an attempt to claim credit for my work." "That's career suicide for both of us," Richard said. "Yes, it is. Just like my termination was career suicide for me. The difference is that I didn't deserve it." "And fourth," I continued, "I want to be compensated appropriately for the value of the Neuralink trademark, since you've established through your licensing deal that the trademark family is worth $12 million years, and since my trademark is the foundation of that family. I think $7 million is more than fair." Marcus was shaking his head. "Sarah, even if we wanted to do this, the company doesn't have that kind of money. The Dataflow deal was our lifeline, and without it, we're facing bankruptcy. Then let me propose an alternative arrangement. I'll license the Neuralink trademark back to Meridian for exactly $100. Both men looked confused. $100? $100, plus a few additional terms. Meridian will transfer to me all of the other trademarks in the Neuralink Pro family. Meridian will assign to me all rights to any future trademark applications related to artificial intelligence technology. And Meridian will provide me with a detailed client list and introduction to all potential licensing partners." I could see the wheels turning in their heads as they began to understand what I was proposing. "You want us to give you the entire IP portfolio in exchange for licensing back the one trademark we need to avoid bankruptcy?" "That's exactly what I want. See, Marcus, you and Richard taught me something important about business strategy. You taught me that if you want to control valuable assets, you need to be willing to take risks and make bold moves. You taught me that sometimes you have to be ruthless to get what you want." Richard was staring at me with a mixture of admiration and horror. You planned this whole thing, didn't you? From the beginning, I planned to protect myself from exactly what you did to me. I planned to document my work and track the deadlines that you didn't know existed. I planned to make sure that if you tried to steal credit for my work, there would be consequences. But the trademark renewal deadline, Marcus said slowly, you knew it was coming up. You could have told us. I could have, just like you could have not fired me. Just like you could have given me credit for my own work. Just like you could have treated me with basic professional respect, but you didn't do any of those things. The room was silent for several long minutes. Finally, Marcus spoke. If we agree to this arrangement, what happens to the company? That's up to you. You'll still have your core technology and your existing client relationships. You'll need to rebuild your IP portfolio from scratch, but you'll have the foundation to do that. Or you can sell the company to someone who actually knows how to manage intellectual property assets. And what happens to us? That's also up to you. You can learn from this experience and become better leaders. Or you can keep making the same mistakes and destroying other people's careers. I honestly don't care which you choose, as long as you stay out of my way. They signed the agreement 3 days later. The paperwork was beautifully simple. In exchange for licensing the Neuralink trademark to Meridian Technologies for the sum of $100, I received ownership of the entire Neuralink Pro trademark family, rights to all future AI-related trademark applications, and a comprehensive client database that had taken Meridian years to develop. The public statements were issued the following week. Marcus acknowledged that Meridian's IP strategy had been primarily developed by former senior IP counsel Sarah Martinez, and that her termination had been a strategic error that the company deeply regrets. Richard issued a statement admitting that he had incorrectly represented his role in developing Meridian's intellectual property portfolio, and that credit for this work properly belongs to Ms. Martinez. The industry response was swift and brutal. Several tech publications ran features about the importance of proper IP management and the dangers of not recognizing employee contributions. Marcus and Richard became cautionary tale figures in business school case studies about leadership failures and intellectual property mismanagement. Dataflow, meanwhile, was thrilled to discover that they could now license the Neuralink Pro technology directly from me, cutting out Meridian entirely. Our new licensing agreement was structured at $15 million over 5 years, with additional performance bonuses that could push the total value over $20 million. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was walking into industry conferences and having people introduce me as the IP attorney who built the Neuralink portfolio. It was getting calls from headhunters who'd heard about my strategic thinking and wanted to discuss executive opportunities. It was having Marcus and Richard's former colleagues reach out to tell me they'd always known I was the real architect of Meridian's IP strategy. 6 months after the agreement was signed, I launched Martinez IP Strategies, my own intellectual property consulting firm. My first client was a startup founded by 3 former Meridian employees who'd left the company after seeing how Marcus and Richard had treated me. My second client was Dataflow, who hired me to conduct a comprehensive audit of their entire trademark portfolio. Meridian Technologies, meanwhile, struggled to rebuild their IP strategy without the portfolio I'd created. They hired a series of expensive consultants who couldn't replicate the systematic approach I'd developed. Their technology development slowed as they struggled to navigate IP clearance issues without proper trademark protection. Within 18 months, they were acquired by a larger company at a fraction of their former valuation. Marcus took a middle management position at a mid-tier consulting firm. Richard left the tech industry entirely and now sells real estate in Arizona. I heard through the grapevine that they both signed non-disparagement agreements as part of their severance packages from the acquiring company, which means they're legally prohibited from talking publicly about what happened at Meridian. As for me, I'm thriving. Martinez IP Strategies now employs 12 people and handles intellectual property strategy for some of the most innovative companies in Silicon Valley. We specialize in comprehensive trademark portfolio development, exactly the kind of systematic approach that I'd pioneered at Meridian. And yes, I still own the Neuralink trademark family. It's now worth an estimated $25 million and growing. Every few months, I get calls from companies asking if I'd be interested in selling or licensing the marks. I always listen politely to their offers, but I haven't found anyone willing to meet my price yet. The truth is, the trademarks aren't really for sale. They're a reminder of what's possible when you combine careful planning with strategic thinking and the willingness to stand up for yourself when people try to take credit for your work. But I'm not done yet. The AI technology industry is evolving rapidly, and I'm constantly filing new trademark applications to stay ahead of the curve. I've developed patent applications for several innovative IP management processes. I'm writing a book about intellectual property strategy that will probably become required reading in business schools. Most importantly, I've created a company culture where people get credit for their work, where good ideas are rewarded regardless of who develops them, and where employees don't have to worry about their bosses stealing their innovations. Every morning when I walk into my office, I pass a framed copy of that $100 licensing agreement hanging on the wall. It reminds me that sometimes the best revenge isn't just getting even. Sometimes the best revenge is building something better than what the people who wronged you could ever imagine. Marcus and Richard taught me a valuable lesson about the corporate world. If you're not willing to fight for your own work, someone else will gladly take credit for it. But they also taught me something else. When you combine legal expertise with strategic thinking and the patience to wait for the right moment, you can turn their own tactics against them in ways they never saw coming. The funny thing is, I actually owe them a debt of gratitude. If they hadn't fired me, I never would have discovered how much I was worth on my own. If they hadn't tried to steal credit for my work, I never would have learned how to protect my innovations so thoroughly. If they hadn't underestimated me so completely, I never would have realized how powerful I could become when I stopped playing by their rules and started playing by my own. These days, when young attorneys ask me for career advice, I tell them this. Always document your work, always track your deadlines, and never trust anyone who claims they're restructuring your department for strategic reasons. But most importantly, remember that the best protection against people who want to steal your credit is to build something so valuable that they need you more than you need them. Because in the end, that $100 trademark purchase wasn't just revenge. It was a masterclass in intellectual property strategy, business development, and the long-term value of never giving up on yourself. And whenever I'm having a difficult day, whenever a client is being unreasonable or a deal is falling through, I remember the look on Marcus and Richard's faces when they realized they'd been outplayed by the woman they thought they could easily discard. That memory alone is worth $7 million. But the real satisfaction comes from knowing that somewhere out there, every time someone in the tech industry mentions the Neuralink trademark family, people remember it as my work, my innovation, my strategic vision. Marcus and Richard are footnotes in that story now, cautionary examples of what happens when you underestimate the people who actually do the work. And that's a legacy I can live with.